Drop the narcissistic parent's hot potato of worthlessness. Well, I have fond memories of rainy days as a second grader because instead of playing outside for recess, we'd have to stay indoors, and my teacher would arrange our chairs in a circle. Then one kid would hold a beanbag that was called the hot potato, and the teacher would start playing a song where we'd then pass the beanbag around the circle. Then, when the music stopped, the kid holding the hot potato was out of the game. And needless to say, no one wanted to be holding the hot potato when the music stopped. Well, a narcissistic parent does not feel good about themselves at their core, but instead of taking responsibility for these feelings, they play a rigged game of hot potato with their child. The parent gets to be a player of the game and the one in control of the music. They pass the hot potato of worthlessness to their child, then metaphorically shut the music off. Now the child is stuck with the parent's hot potato of worthlessness. Well, in today's video, I explain the psychological maneuvers a narcissistic parent uses to pass their own worthlessness onto their scapegoat child. Next, I describe why the child has no choice but to hold this unwanted potato. Third, I'll explain why scapegoat survivors have to often carry the parent's hot potato into adulthood. And watch until the end because I'll explain a three-pronged strategy to drop the potato and thereby reclaim the quality of life you deserve. Well, my name is Jay Reed, and I'm a licensed psychotherapist in California, and I specialize in recovery from narcissistic abuse. In my professional and personal experience, I've worked to identify the fundamentals to the process of recovery. And this has led me to what I call the three pillars of recovery. Pillar number one is making sense of what happened so that eventually you can know it wasn't your fault. Pillar number two is gaining distance from narcissistic abusers and closeness with safe people. And pillar number three is living in defiance of the narcissist rules. These pillars work in tandem to help you along the path towards recovery. I think it's also essential to find and participate in communities of people who can get, validate, and support you on this path. I've both seen and experienced large improvements in quality of life after applying these pillars. And today's video falls under pillar number one, making sense of what happened. And all videos are organized according to one of the three pillars into playlists, which you're welcome to check out. Well, if you were a scapegoat survivor of a narcissistic parent or partner, then I encourage you to check out my free ebook on the topic. It's called Surviving Narcissistic Abuse as a Scapegoat, and it goes into other important aspects of what it can be like to be in the shoes of the scapegoat child or partner of a narcissistic abuser. From self-limiting beliefs about yourself that you must adopt to survive, to why the narcissistic personality is so geared to put the people closest to them down. I think this ebook can help you realize how none of this abuse was your fault, but rather the product of the narcissist's psychological and emotional problems. You can find the link to the book in the description box below. How the parent passes the hot potato to the scapegoat child. Well, a narcissistic parent uses a subtle yet convincing psychological maneuver to pass the potato of worthlessness. And there are three steps to this maneuver. First, they unconsciously relocate their own feelings of worthlessness into their child. That is, they just sort of see the child as being defective and undeserving. It's not deliberate, it just is. Second, the parent then coerces the child to think and feel about themselves as being worthless. Third, the parent then can enjoy a false sense of superiority at the expense of this child. And this maneuver is called pathological projective identification. It protects the parent from this hot potato of worthlessness. They go from being helpless in the face of their worthlessness to the one who's in control of it. So long as they can keep the child holding this hot potato, the parent feels safe from it. So the child in this position is called the scapegoat. They are emotionally deprived, devalued, and controlled by the narcissistic parent. Treating the child this way convinces both parties that it's the child who is worthless, not the parent. But for this to work, the narcissistic parent needs their child to keep playing the game. Tragically, the child has no choice but to do so. Well, let's look at an anonymized case example to begin to illustrate this. Sarah felt like her mother's enemy for as long as she could remember. She never knew what she did to deserve such animosity. What Sarah did know is that every interaction with her mother would result in getting blamed for something. At meals, Sarah would be criticized for not having table manners worthy of the royal family. She was chewing too loudly. Her elbows were on the table. She was eating too fast. She was not eating enough. Her mother would find fault with Sarah's decisions in her own life. She doubted Sarah's ability to be polite to others and would monitor Sarah's behavior in public. Later, she might assail Sarah with accusations of acting improperly somehow. If Sarah brought home a report card with good grades, her mother would accuse her of laziness for any grade less than an A+. Sarah could do nothing right in the eyes of her mother. Since she had no other frame of reference, she trusted her mother's assessment of her. She must be prone to bad manners, impoliteness, and laziness. Her mother was just doing her the favor of pointing out these flaws so that Sarah might fix them. Why the parent needs the child to hold the potato. A narcissistic parent needs this child as much as they supposedly revile them. To feel in control of their own worthless feelings, the parent needs to experience those feelings as belonging to the child and know that they can make the child feel this way. They have the power to do so. And so obviously the child has to keep playing the game for the parent to be able to do this. The child receives the message, stay close so I can keep hurting you. Well, let's go back to the case of Sarah. What Sarah could not have known about her mother was how easily her mother could feel worthless. Her mother created a conscious identity where she was entitled to be in charge of others. By extension, she would feel superior to them. But this conscious identity was a rickety band-aid over a core sense of worthlessness that seemed impossible to shake. Her mother saw Sarah's natural propensity to enjoy life and be kind to others and grew envious. Seeing Sarah possess what she did not made her want to ruin these qualities in Sarah. She felt worthless for lacking what Sarah had and would make Sarah pay. This was why she made it her mission to find fault in nearly everything Sarah said or did. Sarah's buoyancy and vitality diminished over time. She just could not sustain it in the face of her mother's constant criticism. Instead, she felt worthless. Now, at this juncture, her mother felt less threatened by Sarah. Sarah's lack of vitality meant her mother had less to envy. Why the scapegoat child holds the potato? It's worse for the scapegoat child to drop the potato than to hold on. The rigged game of hot potato is the only world that the child is offered by their narcissistic parent. In order for a child to feel like they exist, they must find themselves in the world of their parent. But the narcissistic parent lays down strict conditions for joining this world. The child must identify as the worthless one, full stop. To do otherwise is to have no world to share with their parent. This threatens becoming nobody to no one for the child and must be avoided at all costs. The narcissistic parent will also punish the child for deviating from the role of scapegoat. Shows of prowess or pride are met with doubt and skepticism by the parent. Being met this way when the child hopes for reinforcement can produce toxic levels of shame in the child. The scapegoat child learns that there is no place in their world with the parent where the child's value is legitimate. The scapegoat child is pressured to stay in the parent's game of hot potato from within and from without. Holding the parent's potato of worthlessness protects the child from being nobody to no one. It also spares them the humiliation of their parent doubting their worth. The scapegoat child's life with the parent's potato. Life is grim and constricted for the scapegoat child. They must anchor themselves in a world that insists on their worthlessness. This means they cannot overtly grow into the people that they were born to be. The scapegoat child's potentials become hazards rather than assets. Capabilities threaten their ability to identify as worthless. So the child must adopt a set of beliefs that keep them in denial about their worth. And here are a few of such beliefs. First, if I'm not being productive, then I am worthless. Second, I do not deserve protection. Third, I am defective. Fourth, I am unattractive. And fifth, I'm always one mistake away from complete ruin. Such beliefs make success and worth feel fraudulent to the scapegoat child. Now let's go back to Sarah. She found herself denying her strengths to herself. She was a naturally good painter. She could see what she wanted to paint in her mind's eye and bring that picture to life on the paper. In 8th grade, her art teacher, Miss Simonis, took note of Sarah's talent. One day after class, she asked Sarah to stay behind and told her, "You really have a gift, Sarah. I hope you continue to work at this." Sarah felt a bewildering mix of ecstasy, pride, and terror. She didn't know why a compliment would feel so scary, but it did. The next day in class, Sarah found herself acting up in ways that she'd never done before. She threw things at the chalkboard when Miss Simonis turned towards it. She spoke loudly to her friend sitting across the room. All of this forced Miss Simonis to discipline Sarah by giving her a detention. From then on, Sarah would find it impossible to focus and paint in the way she used to in class. Well, Sarah had to adopt the belief that she was defective. Miss Simonis's positive feedback on her painting was at odds with this belief, and it made Sarah feel endangered. Such feedback threatened her tie to the only world she had at home. Why a scapegoat keeps holding the potato of worthlessness into adulthood. The scapegoat child grew up in the only world that was available to share with their family. As painful as this was, it grew to be familiar. It was way better than having no world to share with the people closest to them. We don't easily swap out the world we grew up in for a different world. And in fact, the more abusive our childhood world, the more tightly we cling to it. And this is why scapegoat survivors find it so difficult to think positively about themselves, despite maybe having loads of insight into the origins of why they see themselves as defective and undeserving. Until a new world is experientially available, it can be impossible to live differently. Well, this begs the question, how does a scapegoat survivor build such a new world for themselves? A world where they deserve compassion, protection, and freedom. A world where relationships are not threatened by the scapegoat survivor's dignity. Moving to a world where you can safely drop the potato. Well, I developed the concept of the 3 pillars of recovery to explain how scapegoat survivors can discover a new world for themselves. These pillars work in tandem to gradually create new experience of compassion, protection, and freedom for oneself. Pillar number 1 is making sense of what happened. The scapegoat child must convince themselves of their worthlessness in order to stay in their family's world. The child reasons that their parent deprives, devalues, and controls them because the child must not deserve any better. Now the parent is not acting abusively towards them. The parent is treating the child as the bad person the child supposedly is. The narcissistic parent's abuse may even be seen as a virtuous effort to fix the child's, again, supposed badness. This pillar of recovery involves learning about pathological narcissism to realize that you are undeservedly abused. Instead of seeing your childhood as evidence of your defectiveness or undeservedness, you get to see how it was rigged against you. And as you do this, it becomes gradually possible to experience compassion towards yourself. This pillar shows you that you never chose to hold your parents' hot potato of worthlessness. You get to see how your ability to survive such circumstances is actually very commendable. Pillar number 2, move away from narcissistic abusers and towards safe people. In order to move to a new world where you are safe to know your worth, you also need distance from narcissistic abusers. Being close to people today who deprive, devalue, and control you reinforce the lessons from the old world too much. Such people will punish if you dare to live from a sense of deservedness and adequacy. This pillar helps you offer your self-protection of your emotional well-being. Pillar number 3, live in defiance of the narcissist rules. A critical ingredient of building this new world is the experience of safety when you defy your narcissistic parents' rules. This means deliberately choosing and acting in ways that reflect your worth and adequacy. You gain experience that nothing bad happens when you're good to yourself. And as you accrue more and more of such experiences, you find freedom to choose and act in ways that align with your own rules. And let's go back to Sarah once more. She attended college away from home and took a job as a business analyst. Although she demonstrated competency in this role, she shrunk from sharing her point of view in meetings. She would share her findings with her manager and ask him to be the one to share them at an upcoming meeting. Whenever Sarah spoke up at work, she was flooded with fear and shame. At her first performance review, she got high marks for her productivity. However, her manager told her, "Look, Sarah, you have a bright future here, but you need to grow more comfortable speaking up. Your perspective is well-informed and valuable here. People in the company need to see this about you for you to grow. People in the company need to see this about you for you to grow in your role." Sarah knew she needed help if she was to put her manager's feedback into practice. She looked up difficulty speaking up in meetings on Google and eventually found some YouTube videos that linked this to growing up with a narcissistic parent. As she learned more about narcissism in a parent, it resonated with her experience of her very harshly critical mother. These videos emphasize the importance of getting into therapy, so Sarah booked her first appointment. This began her journey towards building a new world for herself that ran on self-worth instead of self-diminishment. Well, thanks for tuning in this week. I hope you found today's overview of narcissistic abuse of the scapegoat child and how the 3 pillars of recovery can help the survivor incrementally build a new world for themselves. And I want to thank everyone for your continued support of the channel and engagement in the comments section. And I look forward to posting again next week. Take care.